Hello, welcome to Talk to Google. My name is Rob, and I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Richard Browning. Richard Browning is the founder of human propulsion technology startup Gravity Industries, which he founded in March 2017 after inventing, building, and patenting an Ironman-like flight system, the Gravity jet suit. A former Royal Marines reservist, Richard worked on a number of game-changing innovations during his 16-year career with BP before rediscovering a family passion for invention, engineering, and aviation. Richard is the author of Taking on Gravity, a guide to inventing the impossible for the man who learned to fly, a story about how a grassroots innovation can disrupt industries in new, exciting, unexpected ways, in bookshops as of yesterday, May 6th. First, we're going to watch a VT showing the kit in action, and then Richard will join us. Richard, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us at Google today.
Afternoon.
First off, I mean, the kit looks amazing. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen at a Talk to Google event. Perhaps you can briefly tell us how does it work and what inspired you to build it in the first place back in 2017?
Sure. So how does it work? So essentially, it's a collection of little jet engines. They're not a million miles away from the kind of jet engine you get on a civil airliner or a jet fighter. You have essentially two on each arm. If that's your arm, you have one here and one here. And the net result of that feels like the thrust is going up your arm. It feels just like you're leaning on a surface. So you've got one arm here, you've got another arm here, and then on the back, you've got another engine there as your sort of third leg of the camera tripod of support. And in fact, behind me, you can see there's a bunch of suits there. Unhelpfully, if somebody was wearing that suit, their head would be facing the other way. It just looks more fancy that way around. But that's the rear engine that you can see. And either side of the rear engine is the fuel tanks. And the way we fly these is using vectored thrust. So it's not entirely different, actually, for how the Harrier aircraft or the F-35 flies. As you accelerate the power, you just start to feel yourself getting lighter. You feel yourself leaning on the engines. You feel the rear engine starting to lift you forward. And then in your own time, you just sort of lower and point the engines downwards, which then starts to make you rise off the ground. And then all the rest of the control is the same intuitive body movement as you have on a bicycle. You just kind of think where you want to go and your body will just move in that kind of way. It's a very strange feeling that we've trained nearly 300 people either at the Goodwood Estate, where we've got a training rig, and also in LA as well. And you asked me where this came from. Well, there's a longer story in the book around this, but in summary, the seemingly ludicrous idea was, could you reimagine human flight, not by sitting inside or on top of or strapped to a flight machine? How close could you get to you being the flight machine and just add the minimalist amount of equipment? You know, those suits are only about sort of 28, 30 kilos each. They pack into check-in suitcases, and we used to travel all around the world before COVID with them. It's a very small piece of equipment that allows the human mind to do the balance and the body to do the flight structure piece, and you can fly.
That's really, really exciting. And I mean, the book's brilliant, and it takes you on the journey from your very first tinkering in a workshop right through to what is the future of gravity. And perhaps we can kind of go on that journey together through this talk. So you want to build a jet suit from scratch. Where do you start? Did you kind of pick things off the shelf? Were you custom designing bits from the off? How did you go about it from a very early stage?
Yeah, and it's worth saying, I mean, I did all this alongside a day job. I was an oil trader in Canary Wharf for BP for 16 years. And a chunk of my time was in the Royal Marines Reserve as well, which is a little bit of the inspiration around using your mind and your body. That's where some of that came from. But yeah, I'm a massive believer in the innovative journey needs to be started where you can quickly battle test your kind of theories. In fact, your very own Astro Teller, who used to run, and I guess still does, I don't know,
Yes.
your Google X organization. I mean, he speaks very powerfully about this. The idea of very quickly trying to test theories and ideas with available technology, and then either discard the idea or quickly advance. So in the same way, I mean, we used to use the kind of child rucksack that you'd carry your toddler around on a hiking trip. We used to use that, which is a very comfortable, very lightweight, perfectly strong enough structure to hold an engine and some fuel tanks. We used to use that with a climbing harness system built through it, rather than build our own custom, backpack system. In the same way, when I was embarking on this journey, there's about half a dozen reasons why a sensible aeronautical engineer, like most of my family were, would suggest that the gyroscopic moment of 120,000 RPM engine would just be impossible to manipulate. It's going to fight you like a gyroscope, like holding a bicycle wheel by the spindle, or maybe the force is going to be too much, or the heat's too much, or you can't carry the fuel, or there's loads of reasons why in theory this shouldn't work. But you know what? Underneath those reasons is usually an interesting opportunity. And so in the spirit of what I've just described, it started out, trying one engine on one arm after we bench tested them, obviously, and realizing it was a really gentle, spongy push, just like holding a fire hose of water, except this is just air moving a lot faster.
That's really cool. Okay, so you've got yourself a working prototype and you can fly for short periods and move around with it. You want to create a business from this. And what really struck me from the book is the entrepreneurship was one element of it, as well as building a jet suit. So how did you go about telling the world that this suit existed, and perhaps avoiding the Great British Eccentric tag, which our press loves to throw around?
Yeah, indeed. And I've often reflected that, yes, it was quite a hard challenge turning this idea into something that actually technically worked, but I managed to crack that with a couple of colleagues, again, in evenings and weekends throughout 2016. By November 2016, we'd got to the very first flight. But then the bigger challenge was actually, how do you package, or what do you do with this? I mean, it looked like an eccentric, mad thing to be doing in a farmyard for a few seconds. And it took quite a leap of imagination to sort of project forward, A, how you could use it, and B, how you would navigate the journey towards that point. And forming the brand Gravity, trying to work out where this sat around the sort of Marvel superhero-y kind of comic book thing, because everybody that came to see it came away going, oh my God, it's like an Iron Man suit, or like a Rocketeer or whatever, which I sort of thought, look, it's not why I started. And it hadn't really even dawned on me until people started making those observations. And I thought, gosh, there's something clever there about trying to run with that energy and enthusiasm from that film franchise, but not try and make it become shallow and pointless and not really real, which is the slight challenge of that of that genre. So yeah, it was a really interesting challenge to try and navigate that. And yeah, I think we've done a pretty good job. And we launched the company in April 2017. Immediately got called up by Chris Anderson to do TED in Vancouver. On the way there, stopped off in San Francisco to see the Drapers, Adam and Tim Draper, who my only motivation was really just to test the equipment before the very first demo at TED outside of the farmyard where we developed it. I thought, this is going to be industrial scale humiliation if I do a TED talk and then can't get it to fly or fall over. So I thought, let's test it in San Francisco. I did a very lame little flight around the car park, or their parking lot, as they would call it. Very delighted that it hadn't, caused a problem and fallen over and everything like that. And Adam and Tim Draper, who then dawned on me were very famous Valley VCs, wrote me a $640,000 deal for 10% of the company, Gravity, that I just formed, and said it was the greatest thing they'd ever seen. And so I packed off then 2 days later to go to TED. And I thought, well, so far this is going quite well. And since then, we've done 115 events in 33 countries, trained all those people I mentioned, done lots of brand related stuff all over the place. And as you might have possibly come across on some social media in the last 72 hours, you've noticed we do a lot of military and search and rescue stuff. So yeah, I'm really proud how I've turned a frankly mad idea into something that actually works, that other people can do, and increasingly has some niche applications.
When you speak of the Drapers and you meet a lot of people, as a startup tech founder, how do you decide who to collaborate with, who not to? Because you must have had a lot of interest in those early stages. People go, this is great, how do I get involved? Yeah,
kind of relentless. It's a challenge. One, it's very flattering to be running a business that people want to be part of. And then two, it's actually really hard to do anything with a relentless succession of people. I mean, to give you an idea, I mean, the post on one social media platform from the activity with the Dutch, before we posted the stuff for the British, has done 30 million views. Your very own good, YouTube. And we're not this isn't a pop music video doing billions, but I mean, we've done 1.5 million in 2 days or whatever on our channel, of views and stuff. And we've got films on there that have done 30 million. So we are reasonably well known and get somewhat inundated with amazing people and offers. It's a business decision. I don't like dismissing even the sort of more ludicrous end of things, because every now and then one of them leads to something you never quite imagined. But it is a challenge, and we've got an amazing team of people now in Gravity that is, I suppose, a derivative of that outreach. And if only there was more time in the day to do more with some of the amazing people that do reach out. But it's a great problem to have, really.
Great, thank you. To those watching, please do put questions in the live chat, and we'll come to some of those shortly. Okay, so startup founders often find their work impinging on their family life. You obviously have the added element of a jetpack, carrying around a lot of jet fuel with you. How did your family cope with your hobby that turned into a business?
Well, I mean, firstly, it's mentioning. So the surprising fact about jet fuel, people liken that to thinking it's probably somewhere around sort of nuclear fuel and hydrogen. Yeah, if I tell you it's the same stuff as diesel, does it sound quite sexy and terrifying? No,
I'm not sure I'm flying around on my back, but perhaps a little less dangerous.
Diesel, you can, and don't please let no one go and try and do this, but it's extremely hard to set fire to. You can put matches out in diesel. So in 5 years of doing this, we've never had, despite a lot of fire safety measures constantly around us, we've never had an issue with the fuel. So that's another one of the common assumptions which you can not worry about. It's simply falling over. It's falling from whatever height you're flying at is the worry. But we manage that by not flying too high. I mean, over water, you can go really quite high because it's just a damp day out if you fall in the water. But anyway, in terms of my family, I'd done quite a lot of slightly unusual things in my time, but they were more like ultra marathons or the Royal Marines and things like that. But this is slightly out there, I guess. My family were very supportive on the early stage of rather strange R&D at the weekends, taking my kids. My two boys are 13 and 14 now, but they were 9 and 10 or 8 and 9 or whatever when I was starting this. And they're quite used to the idea that dad sort of flies around and does this kind of stuff. But the risk side of it is very important. I used to cycle commute across London every day for 10 years. And I like to think that most of the time we're doing stuff less dangerous than that. That's my kind of benchmark.
Yeah, I would hazard the saying that's quite dangerous. I think London. And what have you found more challenging, building the kit in those early stages, or the entrepreneurship side of growing it as a business?
They're just different, really. I think that, people can probably empathize more easily with the challenge of actually building the kit, because you look at it and think, well, barely looks like it's real now. It's quite flattering still when every now and then people think it's fake. In fact, there was a wonderful post recently on one social media platform, which I have to tell you, which is brilliant, which was that somebody was chastising the Royal Navy and the Royal Marines for partaking in what was clearly a fake film, which I thought was brilliant. That's hard, because guess what? It was an idea that sounds mad, and you have to journey down that pathway, not really knowing what's at the end of the pathway. It is very much your colleague Astro Teller's kind of world of doing all the crazy things that they try and do. I think what's less glamorous, but arguably in some ways harder, as you mentioned earlier, is taking an invention, a creation, and then navigating the minefield of commercial business, everything from patenting it to branding it to marketing to manufacture to PR to media, all of that stuff. Getting all of that right, where there's not that much room to get any one of those things wrong, is the boring slog that any successful entrepreneur or, small business, manager, CEO has to try and navigate. And I'm really proud that, it's taken all of my prior experience of running a trading book and setting up businesses all over the world to be able to do what we've done. And it's challenging. Doing new stuff is really hard. It really is, full stop.
Yeah, it is. And of those, you spent 16 years at BP. What did you bring from there? We work in a corporate environment. I'm sure not dissimilar on some level from BP. What did you bring from that experience to this new tech startup?
Yeah, I was quite lucky because I mean, as I cover in the book, I'm a bit of a weird split personality, really. I, on the one hand, love being the black sheep, always questioning why, asking the awkward question. In fact, this exactly sounds like my eldest son at the moment. So I'm having it right back in my face, which is great, because then when you get to about 25, actually all those questions end up being really useful. But up to that point, they just make you very unpopular if you're not careful. So in a corporate environment, I kind of went down that road because I was actually, at the same time as being that questioning individual, I also was very risk averse, actually, underneath the surface, because the experience of my father that I talk about in the book. I witnessed all of that passion and spirit literally implode to the worst possible outcome. So I sort of pursued a relatively safe trajectory through a corporate, as a corporate employee, except I naturally percolated through towards the trading part of it, ending up running my trading book, which is the most free sort of risk managing entrepreneurial part, one of the, anyway, that you can find inside a big corporation. Again, I guess, like Astro's organization inside Google, or I guess you've got some skunk works type divisions that aren't necessarily going to succeed or fail. Who knows? Go and have a go, and we'll just about forgive you if it fails. Although as Google gets bigger and bigger, you'll find that harder and harder to forgive. It's just a natural trajectory. So actually running a trading book is constantly about taking risk and hopefully succeeding slightly more times than you fail, or at least the successes outweigh the failures from a financial point of view. So actually, in hindsight, through the medium of doing quite a lot of interviews over 4 years, it sort of dawned on me that running a trading book is quite like being an entrepreneur. You have a portfolio of activity. You don't put all your eggs in one basket, and you hope that your general trajectory, despite constantly adjusting it and dropping some things and putting new things in, is positive. And I mean, the fact that we've had one of our best years despite COVID, when we used to generate most of our money from doing events around the world, I think is kind of testament to that. We adapted. After printing some COVID masks, we adapted pretty much instantly.
And how have you adapted over the last year? What's the change?
Yeah, so we lost the events, we lost client training. We've taken on a load more sort of brand TV stuff. I mean, people might have noticed we did Top Gear, for instance, as just a recent example. Because TV and filming work was allowed to carry on, we actually managed to get out quite a lot and do that, which is we're very lucky that the rules allowed that. We spent an awful lot of time on R&D, which led to a lot of the advancement you see in the military films. We did the search and rescue stuff. We actually we've got you guys to thank for a good chunk of it. To my amazement, we make really good money out of YouTube and less good Facebook. And some of the other channels. I mean, who knew? I'm 42, and I'm delighted that a large part of our business is making money out of social media. I mean, madness, still right. Amazing. And there's no lip syncing or, doing silly things with pets or anything like that. It's amazing how we just sort of lit up a whole bunch of areas of that portfolio and just went, oh, well, we were 3 weeks away from getting on a plane to go to Bermuda to launch our race series. It's a bit of a shame because we spent nearly 20 grand on getting a shipping container sitting out there all ready to go, and COVID just killed that. Yeah. So, but you know what? We didn't put enough resources into that it was terminal, and we just switched fire to another priority. And so I think people listening to this wouldn't find it surprising to hear us talk about having a portfolio of technical innovations going on. In fact, there's hopefully not annoying 3D printer there is printing the latest in a long line of prototypes of something. I can't really tell you what we're doing, but we're testing repetitively something. That's just one of a big portfolio of engineering evolutions going on. But if I said that actually we take the same approach from a business perspective, I guess like the massive portfolio you've got in Google at the other end of the spectrum, that if suddenly everybody falls out of love with YouTube, do you really care? You've got a million other things going on. So we've applied the same kind of strategy.
So how, within that R&D process, I mean, there must be a multitude of different directions you could go. I think you talk about an electric suit in the book, and the racing sounds amazing. How do you prioritize what to do? Is it kind of the long term or the short term?
Yeah, it's a judgment call. There is certainly no corporate process we go through and then sit in a boardroom and then go and discuss it. I did 16 years of that kind of stuff, and we gleefully don't do that now. This is about a healthy, sensible, engaged view. So you're right, it's quite difficult sometimes. We could spend quite a lot of time and money on going and testing something out, knowing that even if it works, it might not generate any money. There's an annoying bunch of technical evolutions with these suits here where we're very proud of what we've done because it's way more efficient and neat and tidy and a more elegant solution. But frankly, will anybody ever notice in any of the things we do, even the military? Probably not. In which case, we have to be careful of not getting sucked down that route, doing the things that as a bunch of engineers, which is really our sort of core passion, we go and do that don't pay back. So I have to put my trader hat on and go, hang on a minute, that we've got to just stop spending money on those and actually go and do possibly some less admirable developments that actually generate more, I don't know, more appeal from a media point of view, or make them more useful from a military perspective. You know, you can see in the military films just how quickly you can, with the engines on your arms, you can stow them. It's sort of like holstering pistols, and faster than you can get your hands free, having fast rope down a helicopter rope or climbed up a caving ladder, which are the two alternatives in that scenario. You can have your hands free for whatever you might need to do with your hands. That was a whole R&D journey where we printed countless versions of the stowage system on these machines. And we got there in the end. And now look at the value. You know, it's dismissed the concern that the military had about, oh, look, you can't use your hands. So there's one example.
And when you've been working with the military, how quickly can someone be trained to use the kit? What pre-existing training, skiing, cycling, you know, what helps when using your kit for the first time?
Yeah, so the training thing is quite surprising. I think most people find this quite surprising. So we can train most people with our safety tether system. You can see this, you know, on Gravity Industries on YouTube, or the Take on Gravity on most other things like Instagram and stuff. If you scroll down, you can see examples of people on the training rig. It's a grated mesh platform about 1 meter high, really big area. You've then got what looks like a climbing top rope. And the idea is that as you're just squeezing on the power on a very low level, you can just realize that it's a very gentle kind of surface you're leaning on. You know, if I just close my eyes and imagine leaning on a kitchen worktop, it feels like that. It's very, very benign. And then as you're sort of realizing that if I move one way, I can put my hand out, I come back again, you know, your brain starts to wire itself very quickly, literally within minutes, like it does when you snowboard or ski or even ride a bike. It starts to adjust this very powerful balancing machine we've all got to that new behavior, but all the time on that safety tether. So because you relax into it and go, gosh, I can't even fall over here. We've had people learn to do this in a cumulative 10 minutes. In fact, the record sounds ridiculous. The records, I don't usually share this because it just sounds like I'm making it up. One of my team, he is a GB team gymnast, so he's very good at knowing where his elbow is from his other part of his body. He learned in 3 minutes. So we gave him a 1 minute go. He came off, it was brilliant. We upped the power, still on the tether on the second go. Was so good, we took him off. We don't do this anymore. We took him off the tether on the third go and he just flew around. But most people, by the end of an experienced day at Goodwood, you can see that on our website and stuff, then most people can pretty much hover and fly around, but still knowing that tether's there just to make sure they don't stumble and fall over. So it doesn't take very long at all.
That's really interesting. And so therefore, is the kit available privately to purchase? Is that sort of a revenue stream for the future?
The answer really is not really at the moment. Our reputation is more important than just selling them to anybody and then suddenly somebody doing something stupid or hurting themselves with them. No one's hurt themselves with this gear at all in 5 years, which I'm very proud of. And yet, if you were stupid, a bit like a fast motorbike, you can just open the throttle and 200 miles an hour later, you're in a lot of trouble. This, if you want to, you point your arms down and keep holding the trigger down, you'll keep going up until you run out of fuel. Nothing in anybody's brain has ever led them to do that, though. Yeah. It'd be like steering into the traffic in a bike. I mean, it could happen, but you just don't do that. So we have sold two, though, but in both cases, we've then kept the equipment on our site. So the idea is they come in and then they use the equipment when we're doing training or race stuff or whatever. But yeah, the last one we sold was about £340,000. Okay. But for the military and search and rescue, it's a lot more cost effective than that because there's a bigger scale and it's a lease kind of model.
Yeah. So tell me, you've mentioned it a few times. Tell me about the racing. It was going to be launched last year. What's the plan for that? What does that look like? When and where will we be able to watch it?
So the idea behind the racing was that, having done 100 events in 33 countries, every single time you fire one of these up in front of an audience, it is, hopefully as people have seen something on, on social media or TV or whatever, it does look pretty cool on a screen, but you can't underestimate just the effect on people when they see it for the first time live. It's pretty noisy and your brain almost refuses to believe that behind all that noise is a human moving around in a way that it refuses to accept. It's kind of brilliant. I've obviously been the other side of this with my team all over the world. Doesn't matter what culture, it's the same reaction. So why not supersize that? Take a leaf out of the book of the Red Bull Air Race, where they used to have those planes flying in a sort of Sydney Harbour type of arena with big pylons. Make it all much smaller, much closer to the audience with a vastly less health and safety nightmare, frankly, and have real life guys and girls, real life Iron men and women flying around a water course. So if it goes wrong, you just fall in the water. It all floats by itself. It's all, fine. But delivering a whole new kind of scale of live action, visceral entertainment. And we were 3 weeks away, as I say, from going into, launching that as a big kind of televised event in Bermuda. But I mean, I don't need to tell you, live events at the moment, probably not the best time still. So it's all ready to go. It's the natural culmination. If you come and train with us in LA or Goodwood or wherever else we're setting up these training centers, then once you can fly, it's like, well, now what? You could commission your own suit, but it's not really ideal. Why not turn up in amazing locations with us, meet the team, we prepare the equipment, which is kind of how it works in GT racing and stuff for a lot of wealthy people. We prepare the equipment and you just have an amazing time flying in an iconic location, completely carefree, amazing flying over water, and just compete in the race series and then pack up and then you go home and we take the equipment home. Amazing. So that's still the plan. It would be just massive fun. I've often said that I don't really care if no one wants to go and watch it. It's the most off the scale experience flying these over water where you don't have any concern of if you had a problem, it's going to hurt if you fall on the ground. It's just an amazing experience.
Will you go down the F1 route where you have different engineering teams working on it?
Yeah, I mean, the world, the 100-year history of motorsport has got so many different, quite well proven playbooks that it's all there for the copying, if you sort of mean. Do you focus on TV? Do you focus on one constructor type? Do you have individual? It's all there. What I think was important to us is we scale it according to the demand and the natural flow. So something quite cool, I don't know if people know this, that NASCAR in the US originated out of bootleggers, people smuggling alcohol with souped up kind of Model T cars that were trying to outrun the police. And then at the weekends, when they weren't doing that, they'd all meet and kind of compare each other's cars, because actually it was quite important that they were fast and reliable because they had to keep bootlegging. And gradually these meets turned into their own kind of events, and they forgot about the bootlegging bit and just carried on racing these massively overpowerful road cars. And that's where the race series came from. So there's something quite nice about building it from authenticity rather than just trying to build a commercial thing that sells, McDonald's advertising or something horrible like that. So this wants to be really a celebration of the people we've trained to fly, and also increasingly search and rescue and some military people and people like that actually coming together and together pushing the frontier of what's possible in this really unusual form of flight.
That's very cool. And so the other element, as you spoke about earlier, is the work with the military that you've done. How has your experience in the Royal Marines Reservists kind of helped when you've been interacting with different military around the world?
Yeah, I mean, it's just complete happenstance that 14 years ago, I left the RMR when my eldest son was being born, and I never realized I'd be back playing with the same folks flying around. It just happens that if you're a maritime soldier, let's put it that way, humans can't walk on water. So you need a ship or a rubber boat or a helicopter. Well, we've now generated a new possibility, which again, the films speak for themselves, really, that if you want to go and get a specialist soldier from one ship to the other, or a ship to the shore, or shore to ship, or whatever, we can do that in a way that doesn't mean you're hanging around waiting for a helicopter, or you're a single point failure target in a helicopter. This is the systems we built. They're not designed for traveling for 45 minutes. You'll do 5 minutes if you're doing well. But in terms of a 1, 2, 3 mile, very nimble, very hard to oppose, very precise, any weather kind of magic movement of people, you can imagine all the scenarios. And so, the week after we were out there with the Royal Marines, we were with the Dutch maritime special warfare people, special operations people. And there's loads of cool films on your good platform there around that as well, showing how we can move, around vessels and also doing an urban assault kind of scenario. One where, if you imagine, this happened in London, what was it, a few years ago, there was a sort of roving terror threat, horrible things going on, downtown Saturday night type London. The problem the police have to get to that situation and frankly contain the threat is there's traffic and chaos and misinformation, and you can't get helicopters through the streets. So they're often stuck with things like motorbikes or trying to run through the streets to wherever the reports are. So again, I can't go into too much detail, but you can imagine what we can do in those scenarios.
That's very cool. What is the max? You mentioned 5 minutes there. What is kind of the maximum flight time that the kit has?
Around 5 minutes or so. It depends a lot on a number of variables. But yeah, because we've miniaturized this so much, it's the opposite end of the spectrum from how big and efficient airliner engines are. One of the reasons why no one's done this before is because it was thought impossible because you couldn't carry enough fuel. Well, we've tackled that to a major degree, but still you're talking a few minutes, which has never really been a problem because, as I say, this is not designed to be a mainstream form of transport. It's designed to be a hyper instant, nimble way of moving a human, almost like a superhero, around a couple of miles. And that's the price you pay. You can't have everything unless somebody generates very, very good batteries for our new electric version.
Is that coming soon, the electric version? You're working.
Yeah, I am really hanging myself out here, and I don't like doing this. I very much prefer showing up and sort of walking the walk rather than talking the talk, but I keep hearing myself say the following. We should be launching it at the Festival of Speed in July. So this is the Goodwood Festival of Speed, people who are familiar with that. Honestly, I mean, this is innovation. It's not in existence at the moment. We built one a while back and it wasn't great. We believe the one we're building now should be very good, but I don't know really what that means. So who knows? I might have a very lame thing to demonstrate or a spectacular one. That's innovation. So I will see.
We'll look forward to seeing it. Okay, we have a question from Luke up on the screen. Have you considered an autonomous controlled version, perhaps a jet?
Yeah, so this is a good question. So the starting ethos was the idea of, think of a bicycle, a minimalist piece of equipment. You stick a human together with it, and that inanimate piece of steel and rubber does something spectacular. And you can go so much further and faster and whatever. But by itself, with no human, it's just a piece of rubbish. In the same way, inspired by the same elegance, I wanted to create something that used this and used these and the body, because actually in 42 years, these haven't done anything I didn't expect, and not that often anyway. This hasn't either. Whereas as soon as you have vectored thrust nozzles and gyros and, it's not hard to find examples of where control systems have had a bad day out. The nice thing about this is it can't fail upwards. It'll only fail downwards. So your risk is managed by just whatever you're flying over, height and surface. The challenge about going automated is you gradually become a passenger. It gradually becomes a big box that you're strapped to, because you know what will happen. You'll put more engines and more fuel, and eventually you're strapped to the side of what looks like a small helicopter, and you're just typing in the postcode of where you want to go. Yeah. There are better solutions in terms of small helicopters that can do that. So it's a very valid point, but I think as long as possible, we want to keep this to the elegance of what the human can do. And again, look at what we've done on social media in terms of how amazing and how amazingly quick a human can learn to do those kind of maneuvers.
But presumably over time and development, you've automized, that's not a word, you've made some of the earlier controls more automatic, controlled by the kit, rather than you in charge of everything? So
the engine's extremely automatic in terms of how they balance themselves. The control system that we interface with is very smart. It's a CAN bus control system, all very clever. But the fundamental flight is vectored thrust. You should think of the thrust coming out of these engines as a constant fixed force. This is like a brilliant revisit of sort of school level physics. The XYZ components, right? If I stand there with the arms out here and I'm leaning way forward, all 5 engines, 3 vectors, are all almost horizontal, in which case I'm not going to go up. As I lower my arms, I'm resolving the Y component, and I'm getting more and more lift to gradually, rise up. That is so precise and fluid because it's part of me, or you as the pilot, that it's very hard to beat that with an automated system, which also, by the way, is going to need actuated exoskeleton kind of arms, which are going to weigh more, which means you can't carry so much fuel, or you have to add more engines, which means you can then start to struggle to even carry it. And you're gradually getting away from the original elegance of what we, can do now.
Great. Okay, a question from Sophia. Says, hey, Richard, is there a time you've been scared of heights or just generally nervous? If so, how have you overcome that? I think you speak about a pier at one point in the book.
Yeah, so I as a kid was really not very, I never had sort of vertigo, but I really hated heights. I took up rock climbing when I was about 16 to try and sort of get over it. And it's a great way to get over it because logically you're looking at a rope going, look, that's really never going to be a problem, but I'm still scared. So it like isolates your irrational fear. So that used to help a lot, but I still don't like standing. Yeah. And I probably may have mentioned in the book, standing on the edge of the pier at the Bournemouth Air Show with my other pilot then, looking over the side, looking down like 20, 30 feet, thinking, I hate the look of that. I really don't like that. And yet there's something funny when you've got the equipment on and you pull that power in, you just feel this massively reassuring lift. And I'm not scared at all of heights when I'm flying. And I've had numerous failures over the 5 years where I felt the horrible feeling of suddenly that power go and you kind of fall, but we've managed it and no one's ever hurt themselves with equipment. It's slightly irrational, isn't it? I can't really explain it, but I've heard the same from wingsuiters. A lot of wingsuiters standing on the edge of a cliff are terrified, absolutely terrified, like will nervously go to the edge and look over. As soon as they got the wingsuit on, they're in their like for professional mode. It's like they've got confidence in their gear and they know what they can do when they jump off the edge. And I'm not a wingsuiter. I'd still be terrified anyway, but we just don't also fly massively high, which helps as well.
Have you ever considered, I mean, it sounds bonkers, but kind of strapping on a parachute, going up and then parachuting down?
It's a good thought. There's a number of big problems with it, which is that a parachute, you need to deploy it cleanly. And if you get a failure and you start rolling, there's a very good chance you get it wrapped up. So you need a punchy spring or rocket really to take it rapidly away from you. All of this takes time, and time means height. So you probably need minimum 300 feet to deploy this. So what happens if you get a failure at 250?
Yeah.
There's your problem. So, and even if you get a problem at 350, you're still tossing a coin and hoping that crafted designed parachute system kicks in. We prefer the option where, from a tactical, military search and rescue and entertainment point of view, there's no real need to go massively high. You're just a target, or you can't be seen by the audience, and the casualty in the case of search and rescue isn't up there anyway. So that's the way we've mitigated the risk for now. Anyway, there's a bunch of things coming which should help as well.
Great. Okay, Farah has a question. How long or far can you travel in the suit? Which I think you sort of mentioned. How fast have you gone in the suit?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So let's say 5 minutes or so. I mean, I have to say we barely usually fly more than 3 or 4 minutes, which sounds so lame, but you can go so fast and be so nimble and so direct. It's never been a problem. We've flown many miles before. I've flown 85 miles an hour before for the Guinness World Records. It's pretty crazy to go that fast, and that was over the sea. But let's call it 60 miles an hour for easy maths. If you're going to go 5 minutes, then I'm sure everybody listening can work that out. So that's 5 miles if you wanted to. Realistically, again, I come back to the point. This is not why we designed it. It's not supposed to be a long distance traveler. It's the dirt bike of the skies in terms of going very nimbly and quickly over amazing terrain to get somewhere relatively short.
Okay, Matt has a question. You mentioned improved batteries having an impact on the technical capability of your suit. Are there other yet not arrived technologies you'd like to see become viable for use in the suit?
Yeah, so it should be clear. So the current suit is jet engine powered, running diesel or jet fuel. The electric one is coming. Everybody knows, though, the energy density of batteries is a real challenge compared to those fossil fuels. Or you can run biodiesel and biojet. We've run before as well, actually. Batteries are about 30 to 40 times heavier per unit of energy, which is a real challenge for anything flying, which is why, electric planes are only just starting to be looked at. The obvious silly one, and I think I said at the beginning, I wasn't inspired by Iron Man, but it's a great story. Whatever those things are that I expect people, that the Iron Man dude has on his hands, they look really handy. If only I could recreate 50 newtons or 500 newtons of thrust inside a hockey puck, that would be very helpful. You're limited by the laws of thermodynamics really on the engines to a large degree. Incrementally, you can make them lighter and slightly better and stuff, but jet engines, I can't see how they're going to get an order of magnitude better. I mean, there's things like ion thrusters, which at the moment, can waft a satellite over about a week, up to a couple of miles an hour to reorientate it. Yeah. The most powerful one on the planet, I think, could just about worry an A4 piece of paper across a desk if you're very lucky.
That's the one they'll put on satellites to go very long distances.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're basically throwing the mass of ions off a surface. Ions don't weigh very much. So, it's just kind of laughable. No, I think the answer to that is I'm waiting for the technology that no one's even thought of yet. We get a few people contacting us saying, it's a gravity suit. Well, it must be anti-gravity. It's all very, whoops. They've sort of over-interpreted the brand. But as fanciful as it sounds, surprisingly, humans don't really understand at all how gravity works. I mean, it's one of those things all around us that we've lived with, which has a massive impact on our lives. We don't really understand how that force works. So imagine if somebody suddenly unlocked the secret source of that. Suddenly flight becomes very easy because you can stop things being attracted to the ground. Yeah. So that would be my answer. Let's understand gravity. That would be great.
Okay. Excellent. Hugh Morgan has a question. As a former Royal Marine, no surprise to see you doing so well. How has your military training shaped in getting gravity introduced to where it is today? And you talk about, I walked away with the impression that you've got incredible grit. You won't give up on anything if the challenge is interesting to you.
Yeah, and this does come up in the book, and I've sort of this thing has sort of occurred to me in observing myself on this journey, right? Why the hell do I keep signing up for difficult challenges? I'm not very good at sitting still, that's for sure. And I think actually a chunk of it is probably because the ambition that I grew up around my father, who was minded in the same way, but then having seen his journey just never quite get to where he wanted it to get to and end so sort of tragically, I think a bit of a sort of self-Oprah moment here is I'm probably slightly addicted to the idea of taking on ludicrous challenges that if I can only get enough of those over the line, I'll kind of make up for the negativity of what I experienced when I was younger. And it's, you know, there are worse things to be addicted to, right? Because it's ended up getting me to some interesting places. You know, I didn't need to join the Royal Marines Reserve and get my Green Beret over 2 years alongside being an oil trader. That was a stupid challenge, really. But once I'd signed up for it, I just couldn't live with the idea of not achieving it as far as possible. And don't get me wrong, I am used to failing at things all the time. You know, that's what you've got to accept as an entrepreneur, and what actually, you know, again, big corporations get worse and worse at this thing. Failure becomes something you've got to ostracize and never achieve. And yet that is the bedfellow of innovation. You spend much more time failing. At least what I'm printing there, where I'm going to point to it, there, I guarantee won't work. Almost 99%. But I'm not going to get to the one that will unless I go through enough of those.
Yeah.
So I guess as a result, if you're quite prone to giving up, then yes, it's not going to work, is it? This is common with everybody. I mean, your founders had to put up with an awful lot of setbacks and lack of self-belief. I have no doubt, at doing something that now is patently, you know, an obvious, amazing, world-changing thing, and yet you could have asked them.
It's only obvious after you've done it. And
right? Yes. Exactly.
How are you teaching these principles to your kids? They must be interested, and you know, you want them to go and have their own challenges in the future to find those problems that need solving. How are you teaching that?
I think the key word is very subtly. It's a very common trait for the kids of anybody, especially if you're even at all in the public eye in any way. Your kids are incentivized to do something completely different, right? You know, I think the kids of pop stars are the last thing they want to be seen doing is listening to their parents' music, right? It's probably the least cool thing in the world. My kids are both, my youngest, when he was a couple of years ago, he was our guinea pig for the first electric suit on a tether, to be clear. He wore a little Iron Man onesie as well. It's brilliant. We should probably share that film. When we've got the latest electric one working, it's much easier to show all your fails when it works. Yeah. And my eldest has been in the jet suit when he weighed barely more than it did. So I think the neatest thing to do is just go on your own pathway, you know, as the adult here. Sort of adult, and let them take what they wish from the journey. You know, it's quite cool that we've, you know, I mean, Bear Grylls was hanging out with us quite a bit, you know, and the kids don't think that's unusual. You know, Bear does flying with us and stuff. And, you know, they're not interested at all when I keep showing up on TV or even on TikTok in front of their friends or whatever. It's just like, yeah, it's just another day out. And actually, I think that's kind of good, not making a big deal of it. So I'd like to think the positive thing, though, is that I don't think they are easily put off a challenge, in that I guess they see what we're doing as constantly doing. I mean, who would have thought we could have done what we've done with the Royal Marines and Royal Navy that you've seen on all those clips, you know, a couple of years ago? We never get invited to even try to do that, and yet we have. So I think their perspectives are stretched in a healthy way. I don't think they see, I think without even thinking about it, they don't see too many things as beyond their reach, which I think usually takes longer as you grow up, you know, out of childhood to start to believe that.
Yes. Oh, great. A question from Luke. Is using hydrogen an option, clean competitor to batteries electric?
That's a good one. Yeah. So in principle, hydrogen is more energy dense than gasoline or diesel, you know, than liquid fossil fuels. The challenges come in the following, though, that the containment solution at the moment is a heavy cylinder, which starts to then erode some of the power to weight ratio. There are very interesting technologies coming where you can sort of hold hydrogen in a sort of sponge matrix, where you're asking each hydrogen molecule just to sort of sit next to its friend and stay there without any pressure or containment. And then with maybe a little bit of power, electrical stimulus, release it as a gas. And those are the kind of breakthroughs. I probably should have mentioned those earlier. They all could maybe change the game, like an inert sponge that you just put a small current through and it gives off vast amounts of gas on demand. That would be good. The other slight fly in the ointment is that, you know, it is so handy to be able to literally put these in suitcases, and me and the team travel anywhere in the world, and often within 20 minutes of unpacking the suitcase, be doing the test flight for a military or a commercial event. You know, we've opened baseball stadiums in Japan and launched cars in China, and because we just say to the event organizers, have you got any jet fuel you can ever get? And no is the answer usually. So can you just go to the gas station and get some diesel? It's a bit more smoky, but how amazing, right? Imagine if that was hydrogen. I mean, camping gas, I don't know. No, I mean, it's butane, but yeah, the practicality would be a challenge. So it would have been a major impediment and barrier to us building the early stage business. But yes, to the medium to long term, quite possibly. Oh, and I suppose there is a safety element as well. If you had a very bad crash and ruptured whatever magic container there is, that would form a vapor cloud, which would blow up probably.
Yeah.
Whereas we can't do that. It's diesel. It's just doesn't do that.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Okay, great. Well, we've mentioned. I kind of want to mention your father as well, because we've sort of spoken obliquely throughout the talk about it. How did that impact you at a very young age? You lost your father at the age of 15 or 16 or so.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of touched on it a little bit. So he'd left a day job, gone on his own entrepreneurial journey. It was about bicycle suspension, and the details doesn't really matter. But he taught me this very valuable lesson inadvertently, which is that it's not enough just to have the idea, to have the engineering genius of the solution. In our case, to fly in that farmyard, that's probably only, 10, 15% of the journey. But sadly, the majority, which most innovators and engineers end up being blind to, is how do you position it, scale it, market it, manage everything from the legals to PR and patenting and whatever. If you don't navigate all of that correctly, you're just not going to make it. And the environment he was operating in was not as forgiving. And the phrase startup wasn't really in common usage. Yeah, and it ultimately, he took his own life in the end. It got that bad. And in a way, a lot of what I've gone on to do, is a sort of, I suppose, tribute to the spirit of what he meant, if you like, which was that unbounded spirit of, innovative creativity. But I'm so burdened with the experience of not just getting carried away because it's an obvious, interesting. In fact, you know what? I just came from a lunch with a really interesting guy who is a wonderful engineer, very experienced pilot, and has this problem. He's got something which I think is brilliant, but the world doesn't know about it, and he doesn't know how to show the world or build a business model around it. And it's so frustrating for those people because they feel like they've done it and it's ta-da, there's my thing. Now, why does everybody not want to come and run with it, make it a success? So I think that was the biggest kind of most powerful thing I drew from that experience, if you like. And also life's very short and just get on with it and try and make the most of it. It's probably the other one.
And how, when you take these ideas to market, I'm interested in how you found your US contacts versus UK. I think we spoke on our call before this about the differences in sort of a mentality and startups in treating factories in different ways between the US and Europe or the UK. How have you found those different countries?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, there's not many places in the UK you could go and do a jet suit flight in a parking lot and have somebody write a £500,000 deal on a tenner and stick it on your back. Well, you've signed it on my back rather than not sticking it on my back. That would have been weird. I do think that countries like Israel and the US, they are relatively new countries. Well, they're very new countries in a way. And there is a more inherent spirit of can do, glass half full, screw it, let's do it. What's the worst that can happen? And by the way, if we don't try something, it's going to be worse than, than trying. Whereas when you go to older kind of societies, like the European societies, including the UK, there is a long tail of historical momentum where everything's working fine, isn't it? Why do we need to try that? Why do you need a jet suit? I mean, I remember sitting at a very illustrious dinner in the first year, and it was a great person to sit next to, very highfalutin, and just didn't get it. Absolutely no idea. Why would I need that now? I don't understand. Where's the market? Where's the business? Don't understand the point. Waste of time. It's like, okay, yep, valid point. I can't answer most of those questions, but I've got a hunch that when, if I'd gone back and described half of the innovations that have happened in the last 20 years, again, probably even your great company, you could probably describe that to a bunch of people 30 years ago. And it's like, what? Why are you cataloging all these words? And why do I need to search for stuff? I mean, I'll just go to the library, won't I? I mean, it's just, it's funny, isn't it? The human condition is one of, in the majority of cases of people, is rooted in the past. And that was a great evolutionary bias to have, because the mad people like me are wondering what over the next hill. I probably got trampled by mammoths or something and didn't come back. So being safe and secure and running with what works now is a better behavior set until about the last 10 years and now for the future. You guys aren't hiring people who are just going to, spout the textbook. You want people who are going to write the next textbooks, right? Yeah. And I do think American culture, we all know this, they're pretty good at inventing stuff, but also very good at commercializing it, ruthlessly. We're very good at inventing stuff in the UK. But, as you touched on, it's annoying and something that, if nothing else, I'd like to try and erode. It's this easy narrative of an eccentric British nutter in his garden shed trying to, burn himself to the ground. Aha, very funny. Actually, that's how nearly every major invention on the planet started. Bill Gates was in a garage, right? He was in a garage and look what's happened there, right? So if we can only just see a bit more glass half full, especially post-Brexit, where frankly we need every help we can get, and post-COVID, with now this massive, dinner tab we're going to carry around our necks for the next 20 years. We've got to get more entrepreneurial and innovative, and that mostly means our big corporations trying to breathe in the reality that innovation is about taking risk. Just make that risk survivable when it occurs. That's exactly our mantra, right? Take risk, just make sure you get back up again every single time it goes wrong.
Right, great. Well, look, that's a really great place to leave us on. The book is Taking on Gravity. In fact, I will ask one more. Richard, if people want to find out more, they can search for Gravity Industries on YouTube or see you at an air show somewhere soon.
So yes, of course, YouTube. So Gravity Industries is the handle on YouTube. That I will say is going very well. So thank you again for that. But on evil Facebook and Instagram and all these other lesser platforms, the tag is Take on Gravity. Okay, it's a bit like the book actually, Take on Gravity. To be honest, you can see the most on those platforms. You can see where we're training people, doing military stuff, doing R&D, whatever. You can see a lot on there. But also, if you go to our website, which is gravity.co, so just .co, you can find out about flight training at Goodwood and whatever else we're doing. And when we're back allowed doing events, you'll see us start publicizing those. But yeah, unsurprisingly, we're not rushing around trying to do events at the moment, really, but just because we're not, it's too early with COVID. Yeah. But yes, any of those platforms, I would encourage people to go and visit if they get a moment.
Great. And everyone should go and purchase the book. And of course. Out in all good bookshops now. So look, Richard, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And thank you for coming to do Talks with Google.
Thanks very much. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Yes.